there is seemingly no downside limit on the micro meddling politicians will do in the transit area, and that has now become maybe the biggest obstacle, even more so than money. They, meaning the politicians, seem to decide where subways will be built. And while I understand they are accountable because they're the ones that are up for election as opposed to public servants and whatnot, it seems to me that as often as not, those decisions are made for political reasons and often run contrary to what objective public service transit experts would say should be done. Today in the Toronto Star, Tess Kalinowski, who's an excellent reporter on transportation, and she says here that Metrolinx, and she's just reporting on the news, Metrolinx, the provincial transportation organization, is going to study a subway relief line, the Yonge Street Relief Line. They used to call it the Downtown Relief Line. And she's saying that, and all of the experts you ask would have said that should have been the first project proceeded with some time ago, before the extension up through York University and to Vaughan, because of the sort of crippling congestion on the Yonge Street subway line and the fact everybody uses that and gets sort of fed into it from all over the place. But they're now saying they're going to study that. At the same time, we have the mayor and others saying, well, no, they would think we should have a subway line extending either the Shepherd line or doing something in Scarborough or whatever. And so you're left kind of wondering, well, what is going to happen? And the bottom line is that, as you know, if you have no plan that everybody agrees to and signs on to and says that's the plan, and only in the event of an emergency or some drastic change, like, you know, sort of some part of the city falling into the sea, are you going to change that plan? Then you really have no plan. And so you are left with this kind of meddling and micromanagement and political campaigning that goes on, saying, well, I'll build a subway to your area of town if you vote for me. And so I'm just wondering again, I'm sort of having a bit of introspection about this stuff today, whether when I read those stories the way I do in the paper and see differences of opinion and see fights and debates and reopening and opening and closing going on of all these transit plans, whether I'm wrong about this, and that what the problem is the whole thing has become too political. I get the concept of accountability of elected people for whatever they do or plan or propose or don't do. But what I don't think is right is where you get to the stage where it becomes a complete political football that people are sort of kicking and throwing around each and every day, and that this virtually paralyzes effective, objective planning by those who might be prepared to look at it in an objective way. I have a greater degree of confidence that Metrolinx, while it consists of human beings, does not consist of politicians, and as a result might say, well, we think the Yonge Street Relief Line is the number one priority because we're just looking at numbers and traffic and future growth and, this and that, and making the decision on that basis as opposed to whether people will vote for it or not, which I think often happens when politicians get mixed up in these kinds of decisions. And again, I'm not so much being critical of them as I'm saying I understand politicians are motivated by, in part, wanting to win votes and stay in office. But sometimes that can, I guess, color the kinds of decisions you'll make. I mean, I think the only thing that I would add to that debate and discussion is because, look, subways are better. There'd be nobody, not for every single place, but they're better generally for all the reasons that have been outlined before by many. But you have to also answer the question how you're going to pay for them. And of course, that has not been the subject of any thoughtful discussion by anybody, or certainly by any bold proposals, with the possible exception, and people get mad when I say this, but I mean, if Premier Kathleen Wynne has at least said, look, okay, here are my ideas, and if you have better ones, then I'm all ears. But she's acknowledged the fact that that there certainly aren't going to be any free subways built. There's no free anything built, including streetcar lines or LRTs. This report that's out today from Metrolinx saying they're going to study the so-called Downtown Relief Line, which is like a sort of parallel line to the Yonge Street line, to relieve it. But I'm just astounded at the fact that they can write that kind of report, but that there's a massive debate going on among the politicians as to whether that would be the next subway you'd proceed with, which every expert says should be, as opposed to everybody else's pet project they'd like to proceed with at some other time.